Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Before we start, I would love to politely ask you to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon if you haven't done already. Around 75% of my viewers are actually not subscribed to the channel, and although I'm fast approaching 145,000 subscribers, which is just amazing, I'd love to see that number continue to grow. Also, manufacturers tend to just look at subscriber numbers and not channel views or the quality of my amazing audience. So the bigger that number, the more cars and exciting stuff I can get on the channel. So really appreciate it. It's free to subscribe. I will stop begging now and get on with this video. About 10 months ago, just before the pandemic hit the UK, Steph and I actually got our hands on a very early RS7 Sportback press car. It was also in Nardo Grey, and we drove it from London down to Monaco. I shot 2 videos on that car. One of them was more of a vloggy travel style video. We took the car through the most incredible snowstorms, and it was just one of the best road trips ever. And the other one was more of a review style video along my favourite road, the Red Rock Road, which is about an hour and a half north of Monaco. Both of those videos will be in the description below, so I urge you to check them out after you've watched this. Similar to that RS6 that I shot recently, I realised that I hadn't actually driven the current RS7 on summer tyres. That car that Steph and I took was thankfully on winter tyres, and you get a very different feel for a car on winters compared to summers. I was at an Audi range day at the end of last year and I spotted this RS7 there. It's a base spec RS7 and I think it just looks perfect. It looks much better than the Carbon edition or the Vorsprung edition. I like the chrome accents and I absolutely love the smaller, they're hardly small, but the smaller 21-inch wheels. I love the design on them. That to me is far more an RS wheel than the bigger 22-inch ones, which are just a bit overcomplicated. I also love the fact that you can see some tyre sidewall. To me, that just means that it's going to ride and handle better here in the UK, but we'll find that out very soon. Something else I love about this RS7 is the fact that it lists brand new for just under £100,000. I think it's about £98,500 on the road. Compare that to a Vorsprung top of the range model and you're looking at something that's almost 120 grand. Saying that, this does have a few almost must-have options like the comfort and sound pack, the panoramic sunroof, and the sports exhaust, but it's still £15,000 cheaper than a Vorsprung model. So I'm really intrigued to find out whether you need to spend that extra money to get the Vorsprung or buying a base spec car with a couple of options is the way to go. Jumping inside this base RS7, well, it hardly feels poverty stricken in here. It's a beautiful place to sit. There is less carbon than the Vorsprung model or the Carbon edition, and that goes for the outside as well. And there's probably less Alcantara in here, although there is some on the door cards here. But it certainly feels far more special than, let's say, a normal regular A7. There's enough things that stand out telling me that this is an RS model. And that includes these absolutely gorgeous, very comfortable and supportive RS seats that are covered in Valcona leather. They're electric with memory functions, they're heated and they're ventilated. That's all standard in this base spec car. Something else that stands out is this unique RS steering wheel. RS badging on the bottom there, and an RS mode button that was introduced in this new generation of RS7 and recent RS6. Something else this has, aside from the glorious 4-litre V8 twin turbo, is a specific RS virtual cockpit. So we have fairly traditional looking dials there with a beautiful sort of Google Maps in the middle, and you can change the views and the way that looks by pressing the view button. But if you press the RS mode button, which brings up my RS1 preset, you can see that the gauges there have completely changed, and I've got a rather dominant rev counter in the middle with the speed, and I can bring up my G-force meter on the left, and I've got power and torque percentage figures on the right and a boost gauge below that. So it's very RS dominated now, and there's no mistaking that I'm not sitting in an A7 diesel. This base spec car also comes with Audi's Matrix laser lights, 4-zone climate control, cruise control, reversing camera, you name it, this car's pretty much got it. And I am actually struggling to figure out what a Vorsprung would have over this car, especially as this one's got the sunroof option ticked as well, which makes all the difference. I also tend to go on about Audi's touchscreen infotainment screens a fair amount on my channel. I'm not the biggest fan. The stuff that you find on their higher end models, so the A6, the A7, the A8 and the Q7 and Q8. Now this car's obviously got it as well, and although it looks absolutely beautiful, in fact when you turn the engine off like that, it all goes black and it's just really nice to look at, and when you fire it back up again it all comes to life, and there's no denying that it looks massively impressive. Just in reality, when you come to use it, I'm not the biggest fan. I don't like all of this haptic feedback, touchscreen stuff. You get grubby fingerprints everywhere. And even living with this car for a week, or various Audis that use this, you can never really get fully used to, let's say, turning the temperature up and down without having to look down. It's very, very difficult to, there's nothing to feel here. It all feels the same. So in terms of turning it up or down, you do have to take your eyes off the road and look down at the actual screen, which I find frustrating and almost like we're going back a step. With a traditional, let's say, climate control temperature dial, you know where that is. You don't need to take your eyes off the road. You can reach down. And I know this has a fancy voice control that you can ask to turn the temperature down, but I'm not interested in that. I just want to have some dials. And same goes for the heated seats, although effectively it kind of is a button. Again, there's no way of, if I close my eyes or look forward at the road, I couldn't tell you where that heated seat button is. Whereas if it was a proper button, I would know exactly where it was. There is something pretty cool in here though. When we go into the home page and we go into car and then RS monitor, we've got tyre pressure gauges there, which is nothing new, but when you swipe across we have temperatures of various things in the car, and this is an RS specific thing and I absolutely love it. So you've got engine oil, you've got coolant, you've got brake disc temperatures, and you've got gear oil, which I'm assuming is the gearbox oil, and you've got the sport differential temperature. This has a standard sport differential on the back. Obviously it's a quattro all-wheel drive system, but I think that's really cool, and you can watch that warm up as you get in it in the morning and take it off for a drive. Then you swipe across again and you've got the maximum G meter value screen, which is probably a little bit over the top for something that weighs 2 tons, but still it is a bit of a challenge, especially if you're lucky enough to take this out on track. It'd be interesting to see what sort of G forces you could get up there, and that also mimics onto my RS display up here. I can see that in the left binnacle of the dash. Right, well hopefully that's enough covered for the interior. Let's take this car out for a drive. Let's remind ourselves what is lurking underneath that rather large Nardo grey bonnet. We have Audi's 4-litre V8 twin turbo that produces around 600 horsepower, but more importantly 800 newton meters of torque. That's 50 newton meters more torque than BMW produce in their 4.4 litre V8 twin turbo, and it's the torque figure that's really important for big heavy cars like this. The RS7 Sportback weighs around 2 tons, and with that much torque it just throws it down the road so well. The engine is paired up with ZF's brilliant 8-speed gearbox that we're very familiar with. Audi use it, BMW use it, in fact many manufacturers do, and it's calibrated reasonably well. In this car I've got some lovely brushed aluminium paddles which certainly feel a lot better and nicer than the paddles that were in that R8 rear wheel drive I had recently. And Audi claim this will do the 0 to 62 sprint in 3.6 seconds. Obviously it has the quattro all-wheel drive system and it has Audi's sports differential on the rear axle, so it shouldn't have any issues getting off the line in all sorts of weather. In fact, let's go and test out that 0 to 62 time using my race box. launch control in the RS7 Sportback. Audi claim it will do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 3.6 seconds. It is a little bit damp out there, but nothing that's going to worry the Quattro all-wheel drive system. My race box is now ready. I'm in RS2 and I've got all of the traction control systems switched off. Left foot is hard down on the brake, right foot on the accelerator. Here we go. Oh, savage off the line, and there we go. 3.35 seconds. Wow. First to second, that gear change was savage, and that is an impressive time. I'm sure you agree that was massively impressive and probably doesn't surprise you too much. Yes, it's a couple of tenths down on BMW's M5 competition and M8 competition, but I really think it loses those couple of tenths off the line. It just seems to struggle a bit more for grip than those cars do, which is ironic because obviously Audi and its Quattro system have got a lot more history. But once it's rolling, once it's going, it is so fast, this car. It's absolutely mighty in any gear. That's fourth gear there. It just pulls so hard. Let's peg things back a little bit and knock it out of the RS mode and into automatic and talk about the practicalities of this car. Although it's not an RS6, it's still a very big car, and you're going to expect it to be very comfortable and very practical. From the front seats at least, it feels very similar to an RS6, although the driving position definitely feels a little bit higher, and that's, I think, down to the H point where the seat actually bolts onto the chassis. I think the RS7 chassis is a little bit higher than the RS6 in relation to the roof, so I just feel like I'm sitting a little bit high, but for those of you that watch my channel regularly, there's nothing new there. The rear seats, well, they're a bit more cramped than you get in the RS6, mostly down to the sloping roofline, but it's still a very nice place to sit just for people under the height of about 5'11". And then once you get back to the boot, although from the outside it might look like it could be quite small, it's actually really big in there. 535 litres, which is bigger than that A4 all-road, which is an estate. So plenty of room back there, especially when you fold these rear seats forward. It turns into almost like a double bed back there. So it is a relatively practical car, but not quite RS6 standards. This being the base RS7, it doesn't come on Audi's DRC suspension, their dynamic ride control. It actually comes on the air suspension, and I think that is the choice option to have here in the UK because of our tragic bumpy roads. It really irons out absolutely everything, and even when you press your preset RS1 or RS2 button, it goes into dynamic and stiffens up. It's still supple enough for the UK roads. You don't feel uncomfortable at any time. When you do have the DRC, although it supports the car more and it feels arguably a bit more sporty, it's almost too stiffly sprung for here in the UK. Something else that helps with this exceptional ride quality is the non-optional and standard 21-inch wheels. I talked about how much I like the design of them on the outside of the car. I think they're far less fussy than the 22-inch wheels, but also being a smaller wheel size means that the tyre profile has to be slightly bigger, so it has slightly bigger sidewalls, and bigger tyre sidewalls means better ride quality. It's almost like adding an extra little bit of suspension to the ride, and that really does help iron out all of the smaller bumps. What's this like when you start to push it? Obviously I'm limited because I'm on the public road and there are cyclists and pedestrians and other road users out there, but pressing the RS2 button basically gives me a sharper throttle and a stiffer chassis. It also seems to give me a bit more sound out of that sports exhaust, and I think it sounds really good, especially by modern standards, not by previous RS7 generation standards. Got to avoid other road users that are in the middle of the road. But in terms of handling, I mean, it's amazing. Arguably this car's way too big and wide for a public road like this, but it still feels really nimble. And the reason it does is because this actually has four-wheel steer, just like the RS6 does, as a standard fit. So when you come into a slower section, I think it's below about 40 miles an hour, the rear wheels turn in an opposite direction to the front wheels. So coming into this right-hander here will exaggerate and slow right down. As you turn the fronts to the right, the rears are actually turning to the left, so it kind of pivots on itself. It's really, really interesting. It's not new technology, it's been around, manufacturers have used it for years now, but in a car that has such a long wheelbase, it feels really, really good and makes it feel nimble, which is just really confusing because it's over 5 meters long, but it does feel nimble because of that all-wheel steer. I guess I need to make some kind of conclusion about this RS7. What's it been like almost 12 months after I first tried the car last year? Am I still really impressed with it? The short answer is yes. And what I have discovered with this particular press car is there is absolutely no reason to go for the top of the range, far more expensive Vorsprung model. Arguably, this is actually a better car, especially after you've optioned a couple of things like the roof and the sports exhaust. I really can't see why you would spend that extra 15 grand on a Vorsprung model. My main reason for thinking like that is the smaller wheels. They arguably look better, but most importantly give you a better ride and therefore better handling here in the UK. So to me it's a no-brainer. Go for the base spec RS7 or RS6 in fact, because they share the same specs, same wheels, etc. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want to see more on this RS7, and in fact me talking about 5 reasons you would buy an RS6 instead of the RS7, head over to my Yes Auto channel. There's a link to that below in the description. Thanks for watching. Plenty more exciting content coming soon. Obviously the new M3 and M4 are just around the corner. My new M3 is just around the corner, and in fact I've got an exciting surprise that I'll reveal very, very soon. Take it easy and thanks for watching.